On January 26th of 2011, 27-year-old first grade teacher Ellen Greenberg was found deceased in her apartment. She was found by her fiance, Sam Goldberg, who had popped down to the gym. And he said the door had been locked from the inside and he was struggling to get in. And when he eventually got in, he said, "Oh my goodness, she fell with a knife. She stabbed herself." Well, you introduced a narrative right off the bat, which makes me look at you with a couple of red flags already there. And there's so much more to this case. So she had been stabbed more than 20 times, 10 times in the back of her neck and head, also in her abdomen, and had a knife plunged into her chest. And these freaking medical examiners in Philadelphia keep saying she did it to herself. So I think it's time for a little press conference, and maybe they should get up there and explain to the world how it's possible that she did this to herself. And you get up there with your full face and your whole chest and tell us that it's because she had anxiety. Please do. Don't just do it on paper like this. You get up there and you tell us, because it makes no sense to me. Now we're going to read through this entire 32-page document. And then at the end, you decide, do you think it's possible she did this to herself? One request I have is please also help censor this word, okay, because YouTube just unfortunately they don't like this word. Then they're going to send me emails saying, "Are you okay? Your community's worried about you." And I'm like, oh, it's so disingenuous, stop that. Anyway, so just self-deletion, that's the censorship word that I'm using, the censored word I'm using, okay? So if you could do that too, it will just really help the video not get flagged, you know. Okay, so deep breaths, everyone. My name is Grizzly. This is Grizzly True Crime. If you like documents, deep dives, timelines, presentations, trials, watching live trials with me, press conferences, justice for victims and holding people accountable and asking questions to get to the truth, then yeah, this place is for you. Hope you'll consider subscribing. Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. So, Lindsay Simon, MD, please get up there, tell us, make a video even, just tell us how it's possible. But moving on, regarding the review of the Philadelphia MEO case 110420 Ellen Greenberg. Ellen's family has only been fighting for 14 years, even just to have her manner of death changed to could not be determined. But ultimately, yeah, homicide is probably what most people are thinking. That's what I'm thinking. But okay, if they're scared of saying homicide or they just, you know, wrecked the crime scene, they can't prove it, whatever it is, okay, then make it could not be determined. But to blame the victim? Yeah, no, I'm not okay with that. The medical examiner's office was asked to conduct an independent and unbiased, firstly, I'm going to highlight this word, unbiased, because this document doesn't come across as unbiased. To me, it comes across as quite scripted and influenced, but you let me know what you think. Okay, a review of all available materials relating to the death of Ellen Greenberg be conducted by the undersigned. The ultimate question to be answered by this review was whether the manner of death should be changed from the current ruling of self-deletion to could not be determined or homicide. This review was conducted independently by the undersigned, with all opinions being those of the undersigned without influence by any of the involved parties. Well, now that you've said it, are you sure? Why you got to say it? Without influence. It sounds influenced though. But okay. Materials reviewed. Electronic and paper records retained in the medical examiner's case file. Photographs retained in the medical examiner's case file. Electronic and paper records generated by the Philadelphia Police Department. Transcripts for the depositions of Doctors Lindsay Emery, Sam Galino, and Marlon Osborne. Marlon Osborne initially ruled her death a homicide, and then, under the pressure of the Philadelphia police, said, "Oh, okay, no, sorry, she did it to herself." That's a lot. There's a lot of red flags there. Consultative reports from Dr. Wayne Ross, Dr. Jonathan Arden, Dr. Cyril Vecht, Detective Scott Eelman, Henry Lee, PhD, Thomas Brennan, Michael Woodhouse, PhD. Investigative materials provided by Dr. Wayne Ross. Death in Apartment 603, What Happened to Ellen Greenberg documentary miniseries on Hulu streaming service. The medical examiner also watched the documentary to make their medical determination and decided she did it to herself. Okay. Watch it again. Read this again. Look at the pictures. Okay, anyway. Initial report of death on Wednesday, 1/26/11 at approximately 7:30 p.m. The death of Ellen Greenberg was reported to the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, subsequently referred to as MEO. The initial reported circumstances were that the decedent's fiance forced entry into their shared apartment to find Ellen with a knife in her chest. She was pronounced dead at the scene by medics at 6:40 p.m. on 1/26/11. Initial investigation of the death. MEO scene investigation. An investigator from the MEO responded to the scene at 8:27 p.m. on 1/26/11. At the scene, the investigator spoke to the decedent's fiance and police. At this time, the fiance reported that he had left the apartment at around 4:45 p.m. to use the apartment building's gym. When he returned to the apartment at approximately 5:15 to 5:30 p.m., the fiance found the apartment door secured from the inside. He attempted to reach Ellen via text, phone calls, and knocking on the door for approximately 1 hour before he forced entry into the apartment. There's conflicting information in the MEO records as to whether the fiancé was accompanied by staff from the apartment complex when he forced entry into the apartment. In the report of death investigation written by the responding MEO investigator, under the section labeled circumstances, the following description was provided. He, the fiancé, proceeded to contact the decedent via text message, telephone calls, and emails for approximately an hour before he forced entry into the apartment. There's no indication in the circumstances report who provided this information about entry into the apartment. In a separate report, why does the medical examiner, this sounds like a police report, you know what I mean? Focus on the body and what happened. I know they also look at all the circumstances surrounding it. I'm just like, okay. Like, who gives a crap what the fiancé said at this point? Because we do, but you know what I mean? Because it's a red flag. Anyway, moving on, in a separate report written by the same MEO investigator titled Investigation Report, under the section labeled Background, the following description was provided. He, Goldberg, proceeded to try and contact the decedent via text messages, aggressive ones, telephone calls, and emails for approximately an hour before he forced entry into the apartment. An apartment security man was reportedly present during the entry. The MEO investigator noted that all information contained within the background section of this report was provided by the police at the scene and the fiancé. It is not documented in the case file who specifically reported that the entry to the apartment was witnessed by apartment staff. While there are no date or timestamps to verify which report was entered first, the investigation report containing the second excerpt includes details of interviews conducted after the autopsy was underway. The fiancé reported to the MEO investigator that he found Ellen unresponsive on the kitchen floor. He called 911 and was instructed to give CPR.
Help! I need a emergency now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come. Help.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no. Oh no.
Apartment.
It's an apartment. Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where
Ellie!
the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
Think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone. What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her fed.
Oh, God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell on a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her down here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator? 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Okay.
How old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything. Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like, it was, it wasn't like, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling. So I'm
was
yelling.
Your house broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601.
When he began to render aid, the fiancé noticed. Yeah, that's when he noticed. I'm sure you've heard the 911 call, right? Okay. He then noticed the knife in Ellen's chest. At this point, he stopped rendering aid and awaited first responders. The scene of the death was a 6th-floor apartment. The apartment building was described as a gated community with 24-hour concierge service. A severe snowstorm had impacted the region near the time of death, which resulted in several inches of snow accumulation. The MEO investigator documented the scene photographically with the narrative report, the findings of which appear consistent with one another upon review by the undersigned. Ellen was found supine on the kitchen floor with her head and shoulders resting against the lower kitchen cabinets. So she was lying on her back with her face upwards, but with her head and shoulders resting against the lower kitchen cabinets. At the scene, multiple stab wounds were visible on Ellen's chest and upper torso. A knife was lodged in her left chest. The knife lodged in the body appeared consistent with an overturned knife set that was found on the kitchen counter. Yes, blood evidence appeared to be confined to the immediate vicinity of Ellen's body. Photographs of the scene show a patterned imprint in the blood on the floor near Ellen's right hand. The MEO investigator noted blood staining on the sole of Ellen's boot. It is the opinion of the undersigned that the patterned imprint in the blood appears consistent with the tread of Ellen's boot. There were no signs of a struggle in the apartment. Like, okay, this sentence right here, there were no signs of a struggle, but you literally just said that there was a knife lodged in the body, appeared consistent with an overturned knife set found on the kitchen counter mid-fruit salad making. An overturned knife set could be a sign of a struggle. No valuables were noted to be missing from the apartment. Well, yeah, not until Sam Goldberg's family got there, right? Then they took a whole bunch of things out of there and cleaned up the crime scene. Literally at crime scene, cleaners come in. No self-deletion note was found at the scene. No defensive injuries were noted. The sink in the kitchen was dry and had no visible blood or tissue. 2 knives in the kitchen sink were similarly free of blood or tissue. The only sign of forced entry was at the apartment door, where a door latch was incompletely detached from the door. Undisturbed snow was present on the apartment's patio. No alternative means of entering the apartment were identified. Yeah, so did Ellen do this to herself? Or did somebody who maybe also lived there do this to her? Or what? What are we thinking? They say bottles of alprazolam, clonazepam, and zolpidem prescribed for the decedent were recovered from a bedside table. The decedent's cell phone was found in the apartment bathroom. The last outgoing call was made at 2:33 p.m. on 1/26/11 and lasted approximately 30 seconds. The last outgoing text message was sent at 3:47 p.m. on 1/26/11. There were multiple missed calls and incoming texts from Mr. Goldberg. Oh, what a caring guy. Okay, sorry. Between 5:30 and 5:54 p.m. on 1/26/11, there were also missed calls from the apartment building's front desk between 6:07 and 6:10 p.m. First police interview of Ellen's fiancé, 1/26/11. Police transported the fiancé to the Northwest Detectives Division for an interview on 1/26/11 at 11:25 p.m. During this interview, the fiancé said that Ellen was already home when he arrived at home at around 1:30 p.m. that day. While at home, Ellen was upset about her job and indicated that she wanted to quit. The fiancé noted that Ellen had been stressed over work for a couple of weeks leading up to that day. After offering some encouragement to his fiancée, he said he left the apartment around 4:45 p.m. to use the apartment building's gym. When he left, Ellen was reportedly in the apartment grading papers. The fiancé then stated that he returned to the apartment around 5:20 p.m. and found that the latch for the apartment door was engaged. He reported calling and texting Ellen without a response. The fiancé said he then went back down to the apartment building lobby to talk to the building's concierge and see if a maintenance worker was available to help with the door. He said he then proceeded back to his apartment and tried calling Ellen again and again with no response. The fiancé stated he forced entry to the apartment at 6:29 p.m. Of note, during this police interview, he did not claim to be accompanied by apartment building staff when he forced entry, nor was he specifically asked by police if his entry into the apartment was witnessed or not. To me, that's a red flag. When he saw Ellen on the kitchen floor, the fiancé said he called 911. The 911 operator reportedly asked the fiancé if he would be willing to provide CPR to Ellen if the operator guided him through it. The fiancé said he agreed, but when he got close to Ellen to start rendering aid, he saw a knife in her body. The fiancé reportedly informed the 911 operator of the knife, and the 911 operator advised the fiancé to wait for emergency responders to render aid. Timeline of pertinent events on 1/26/11. The following timeline of events was compiled by the undersigned based on the Philadelphia Police Department's documented review of call logs, response reports, key card swipe logs from Ellen's apartment building, and surveillance video from the same location. It should be noted that there is an approximate 4-minute variation between the cited sources. 1:32 p.m. Ellen enters the parking garage of the apartment complex per key card swipe. At 1:53 p.m., the fiancé enters the parking garage of the apartment complex per key card swipe. 4:51 p.m., fiancé enters the gym of the apartment building per key card swipe, corroborated by surveillance video in the lobby. 5:30 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video leaving the gym and walking toward the concierge desk in the lobby of the apartment building. 5:31 p.m. Yeah, that's where we were, sorry. 5:31 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator while reading mail. 6:10 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video leaving a lobby elevator and walking toward the concierge desk. 6:13 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:25 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video leaving a lobby elevator. 6:31 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video walking through the apartment building lobby while talking on a cell phone. Yeah, who are you talking to? Who'd you call before 911, huh? 6:33 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video getting on an elevator. 6:33 p.m., 911 called by the fiancé. 6:35 p.m., medics respond. 6:37 p.m., officers from the Philadelphia Police Department responded. 6:40 p.m., Ellen pronounced dead at the scene. 6:42 p.m., firemen on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:45 p.m., police officer on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:47 p.m., Medics on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 8:15 p.m. Detectives from the Philadelphia Police Department responded. 8:27 p.m. MEO investigator arrived at the scene. 9:20 p.m. Homicide detective from the Philadelphia Police Department responded. 9:55 p.m. Final documented assessment of the body at the scene made by MEO investigator. 11:25 p.m. Fiance arrived by police transport to the Northwest Detectives Division of the Philadelphia Police Department for questioning. MEO interviews. The assigned MEO investigator interviewed Ellen's parents on 1/27/11 at 7:41 a.m. One parent reported last speaking to Ellen on 1/26/11 around 7 a.m. During that conversation, Ellen gave no indication that something was wrong. The parents went on to tell the investigator that Ellen had been dealing with anxiety issues for several weeks leading up to her death. The parents explained that Ellen seemed anxious, insecure, and not sure of herself, and not liking how she felt. She was reportedly under the care of a psychiatrist for this. Ellen's parents stated that she was stressed by her work as a school teacher. They noted that the day of Ellen's death was the due date for submitting her grades. The parents denied having any concerns. They're like the parents, her parents, okay, Josh and Sandee, denied having any concerns about Ellen's fiance, indicating that they were happy to have him as an in-law, describing him as a fine young man. You see why this is starting to feel not so unbiased, I'm just saying. They're like, but they said he was a fine young man. Okay, somebody can be a fine young man until they're not. He hasn't ever made a statement. He hasn't ever said anything about Ellen's death. I don't believe he attended a funeral, and I think he moved after this, and he got remarried. But I'm just like, okay, there's a lot of things to consider, but all right, fine young man. They denied knowledge of any prior verbal or physical abuse in the relationship. Now, I'm going to just say for a moment, I'm not saying this is what was happening, although Ellen did have bruises on her body in various stages of healing. They go into detail about that in this document, okay? But if she was a victim of domestic violence, most times family and friends don't know. The victim feels too ashamed to tell people about it. They try to deal with it on their own. And they could feel anxious, not happy with their life. They could deflect and say, it's work. It's me as a first grade teacher that's stressing me out. These papers I've got a grade for first graders, it's stressing me out. You know what I mean? It feels to me like it could be a possibility. And so saying, but the parents, yeah, they denied any knowledge of prior verbal or physical abuse. Maybe because they didn't know about it then, right? And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. I'm just saying it's possible. There are other possibilities to consider. They similarly denied any history of prior self-deletion attempts or ideation. On 1/27/11 at 11:30 a.m., Ellen's psychiatrist was interviewed by the assigned MEO investigator. The doctor stated Ellen only recently started care and had only been seen 3 times before her death. They indicated Ellen was being seen for severe anxiety that had persisted for approximately 2 months. Ellen indicated stress related to work, feeling overwhelmed and pressured. Ellen mentioned during a session with her psychiatrist that recent changes in school regulations and issues with difficult students were at issue. Ellen indicated she was contemplating leaving her job. The psychiatrist reported that one of Ellen's parents contacted the psychiatrist's office to convey their concern for their daughter. During psychiatric sessions, Ellen had nothing but good things to say about her fiance. I could not eye roll harder at this. Let's see the psychiatrist's report. Let them speak for themselves. Tell us. Really? And if so, there could still be a lot more going on behind the scenes. But okay, what a fine young man. It sounds like this medical examiner thinks the fiance was, right? Do they know him? Are they friends with him? Okay, do they go to barbecues together? What? Okay, anyway, so noting that Ellen smiled when speaking about him and their upcoming marriage. Ellen denied any verbal or physical abuse in the relationship when asked during her appointments. Ellen had originally been prescribed sertraline, known by the brand name Zoloft, for her anxiety, but eventually switched to alprazolam, known by the brand name Xanax, and then zolpidem, known by the brand name Ambien, with clonazepam, known by the brand name Klonopin, to help her sleep. Are they going to blame the medication on someone blitz attacking themselves? A summary of the autopsy report. The remains, so trigger warning, okay, because it does get a little bit graphic. There's a lot of information in this report, but I want to make sure that you do have the full report. Yes, you can read it yourself, of course, but I will link that for you. But also, if you want someone to read it to you, that's me, okay? A summary of the autopsy report. Sorry, I've got like a hair in my face here. Hold on one second. Okay. The remains of Ellen Greenberg were examined at the MEO, Medical Examiner's Office, on 1/27/11 by Dr. Marlon Osborne, with the examination starting at approximately 9 a.m. Ellen weighed 136 pounds and measured 5'7" at the time of the autopsy. The final autopsy report was printed on 4/4/11 and signed by Dr. Osborne. The signature on the final autopsy report appears to be the undersigned to match the signatures on both the original death certificate issued by Dr. Osborne on 1/27/11 and the amended death certificate issued by Dr. Osborne on 4/4/11. Dr. Osborne's autopsy report was notable for 20 stab and incised wounds of Ellen's chest, abdomen, posterior scalp, and neck, which were arbitrarily designated wounds A through T. All the wounds were described as having associated soft tissue hemorrhage. 8 of these stab wounds were on the chest and posterior neck, penetrating only 0.2 or 0.3 centimeters, less than 1/8 of an inch deep, with only superficial soft tissue injured. 5 of these stab wounds were on the chest and posterior neck, penetrating 1.4 to 2.1 centimeters, between 1/2 and 7/8 inches deep, with no vital structures injured. 1 stab wound on the posterior neck penetrated 3 centimeters with, so approximately, you can just see all of these, I'm just going to read, 3 centimeters with no vital structures injured. The depth of penetration was not documented for the incised wound of the posterior or right scalp. The 5 remaining stab wounds documented in the autopsy report are summarized by the undersigned as follows. Stab wound E, perforations of the aortic arch and the left lung. Depth of penetration 10 centimeters. My goodness. Okay, associated hemopericardium 120 mils, left hemothorax 600 mils, and right hemothorax 500 mils. Serrated knife recovered from the wound. Stab wound H, perforation of the chest wall, penetration of the liver, depth of penetration 4 centimeters. Unspecified volume of associated intra-abdominal hemorrhage. Stab wound I, wait, is it I or L? I think it's I. Perforation of the abdominal wall, penetration of the mesentery, depth of penetration 6 centimeters, associated intramesenteric hemorrhage. Unspecified volume of associated intra-abdominal hemorrhage. Stab wound N. Perforations of dura at skull base and intercranial blood vessels overlying the cerebellum. Depth of penetration 8 centimeters. And she did that to herself? And all of that before the knife went into her chest? Associated subarachnoid hemorrhage of the cerebellum. Stab wound T, perforations of the posterior neck muscles and dura of the spine between the 2nd and 3rd cervical vertebrae. Depth of penetration 7 centimeters. Associated focal epidural hemorrhage of the spinal canal. In the autopsy report, the cervical spine cord was described as bulging near the defect of the cervical spine dura. Per the report, this segment of spinal cord was submitted to Dr. Lucy Rourke, a neuropathologist practicing at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, for examination. Seemingly contradictory statements about the outcome of that examination were included in the autopsy report. On the findings and opinions page of the report, Dr. Osborne wrote, "The spinal cord injury was evaluated grossly by neuropathology. It was concluded that the injury to the spinal cord would not have incapacitated the decedent, I'm sure they mean decedent. Therefore, the decedent would be able to inflict the subsequent stab wounds to her body." However, on page 6 of the report of examination, in the description of stab wound T of neck, Dr. Osborne wrote, "Note, neuropathologist Dr. Lucy Rourke examined the spinal cord and concluded there's no defect of the spinal cord." Other pertinent findings in the autopsy report were multiple contusions on Ellen's right upper arm, right forearm, abdominal wall, right thigh, and near her right knee. Dr. Osborne summarized these contusions as being in various stages of resolution. Findings and opinions page, second major bullet point. Dr. Osborne affirmatively stated there were no petechiae in the eyes, conjunctivae, nor were there any injuries to the lips, oral cavity, external genitalia, perineum, anus or vaginal canal. He also affirmatively reported that there were no injuries of Ellen's anterior neck muscles, hyoid bone or thyroid cartilage of the larynx. Details from the review of the autopsy report and photographs. In general, the undersigned agrees with the findings documented in the autopsy report when compared to the photographs taken at autopsy. However, there are omissions and errors regarding the documented injuries in the autopsy report that require attention. Stab and incised wounds, external findings. Dr. Osborne documented and described a total of 20 stab and incised wounds on his final autopsy report, which appears to correspond with notes taken by Dr. Osborne during the autopsy. Autopsy photographs demonstrate 3 additional perforations in the skin, which were unaccounted for in Dr. Osborne's report and notes. Specifically, there's one small vertically orientated perforation in the skin of the posterior or right neck, approximately 0.5 centimeters in length compared to the photograph scale. One small obliquely orientated perforation in the skin on the right side of the neck, approximately 0.3 centimeters in length compared to the photograph scale, and one small horizontally orientated perforation in the skin of the upper chest, approximately 0.3 centimeters in length compared to the photograph scale. All these perforations have photographically documented soft tissue hemorrhage and are less than 3/16 of an inch in length when compared with scales in the photographs. It is the opinion of the undersigned that these omitted injuries did not result in significant internal injury. Okay, so stab and incised wounds, internal findings. Are you still awake? Are you still listening? We're only on page 7 out of 32, okay? The described internal injuries associated with stab wound E do not completely correspond with the photographic documentation. There were no reported perforations of the pericardium or its contents, yet there was 120 mils of blood in it. Based on review of the photographs, it's the opinion of the undersigned that stab wound E, in fact, extended through the pericardium and into the ascending aorta. Whether there was also a perforation of the aortic arch, as stated in the report, cannot be adequately assessed by the autopsy photographs. It also appears based on photographs that this stab wound resulted in penetration of the right lung. Whether there was also an injury to the left lung, as stated in the report, cannot be adequately assessed by the autopsy photographs. There are small but significant omissions in the description of the internal injuries associated with stab wound N. On the surface of the anterior or right side of the pons at the right middle cerebellar peduncle is a superficial incised wound with hemorrhage. This incision is best seen on photos of the brain taken after formalin fixation. The hemorrhage visible in the incision indicates it was an ante-mortem injury and not an artifact from the autopsy process. Dr. Osborne's report also described subarachnoid hemorrhage on the cerebellar vermis and right cerebellar hemisphere, which corresponds with autopsy photographs. However, these photographs also show subarachnoid hemorrhage on the left cerebellar hemisphere near the vermis, on the inferior aspect of the right temporal lobe of the brain near the foramen magnum, and on the anterior right sides of the pons and medulla. These areas of subarachnoid hemorrhage were visible in photographs of the brain, both at the time of the autopsy and after formalin fixation. I know there's a lot of nurses, doctors, medical examiners, lawyers in this community, and maybe you would find this document helpful to you. If you find like, damn, this is way too much detail for us, Grizzly. Some people will appreciate it, right? Some people might just want to listen to what all is in this report. So that's why I'm just going to read you the whole thing. Blunt impact injuries, external findings. Dr. Osborne's autopsy report described a total of 11 contusions. On the right upper arm, 1, right forearm, 3, right lower abdomen, 1, and right thigh, 6. There's no description in the autopsy report to indicate which of these contusions Dr. Osborne believed to be resolving. Okay, whole bunch of bruises in different stages of healing though. It is the opinion of the undersigned that the described contusion of the right upper arm and some other contusions of the right forearm and thigh were resolving. The remaining documented contusions of the right forearm, abdomen, and thigh appear to be more recent. Okay, but it's not from Pilates or yoga, is it? Could be. Isn't that what the fiancé said? After review of the photographs, the undersigned identified the following contusions, which were all omitted from the autopsy report. These injuries have been subdivided into those documented in Dr. Osborne's autopsy notes and those that were completely undocumented. The commentary on the color and shape of the contusions is that of the undersigned. Contusions documented in the autopsy notes but omitted from the final report. 2 round faint brown contusions right mid buttock. 1 round faint red contusion right lower buttock. 1 round faint brown contusion right upper shin. 2 round faint blue contusions anterior mid left forearm. 1 round red or purple contusion anterior medial mid distal left forearm. 1 round faint red or brown contusion anterior left thigh, and 3 round faint red or brown contusions left upper shin. Contusions omitted from both the autopsy notes and final report. 1 irregularly shaped faint, omitted from both the autopsy notes and final report. So it gets worse. There were even more bruises in various stages of healing. Okay. 1 irregularly shaped faint red contusion, superior left forehead near the hairline. 1 very small round faint blue or purple contusion, right side of the neck, below the level of the previously described stab wounds on the right neck. 1 very small round faint blue-purple contusion anterior neck near the medial edge of the left sternocleidomastoid muscle. 1 faint brown contusion central or right lower chest near the edge of the rib cage. 2 irregularly shaped faint green or yellow contusions anterior medial distal right thigh. 1 round faint green or yellow contusion lateral right hip, slightly below the posterior to the contusion of the abdominal wall described in the autopsy report. 1 round faint red or brown contusion medial right thigh near knee. 1 round faint red or brown contusion medial left thigh near the knee. Blunt impact injuries, internal findings. There are also internal findings of blunt impact which were not described in Dr. Osborne's report. Autopsy photographs of the anterior neck dissection showed 2 discrete areas of hemorrhage in the right sternothyroid muscle at the level of the thyroid gland. It should be noted that depending on the orientation of the body when these injuries occurred, they may correspond to the surface contusion of the anterior neck described above. Okay, got neck blunt impact injuries. A summary of events from 1/27/11 to 2/25/11. Following Ellen's autopsy, Dr. Osborne certified the cause of death as multiple stab wounds and the manner of death as homicide. Yeah, could we have kept it at that? A detective from the homicide unit of the Philadelphia Police Department was assigned to investigate. The knife recovered from the body, clippings of Ellen's fingernails, the clothing worn by Ellen at the time of the incident, and a sample of Ellen's blood were released from the MEO to the police for testing. Police returned to Ellen's apartment on 1/28/11 and collected from there her engagement ring, several grade books, teacher resource books, and money in an envelope labeled trip money. Oh, you mean they collected everything else that Sam Goldberg and his family left after doing a crime scene cleanup entirely? Allegedly? Taking laptops and other personal items and all sorts of things, cleaning up very well. You know. These items were submitted into evidence per copies of property receipts. On 1/29/11, police collected 3 laptop computers and 1 iPhone from a male relative of Ellen's fiancé. Yeah, a male relative. Who's that now? Uncle? Why does the uncle have 3 laptop computers and 1 iPhone from a male relative of the fiancé? These items were submitted for forensic analysis. And wow, then the narrative changed all of a sudden. Okay, on 2/1/11, police submitted swabs of brown stains on the apartment's kitchen cabinet, freezer door handle, and countertop for serology testing. On 2/25/11, police were contacted by the apartment building's property manager. The property manager reported that Ellen's parents were at the building to collect some of Ellen's belongings. At some point that day, one of the parents used the lobby restroom near the building's gym and discovered a small amount of blood. This parent proceeded to station themselves at the door to the bathroom and requested that police come and test the blood for DNA. The property manager reassured them that the bathroom was used regularly by both residents and guests. They also informed them that the bathroom was cleaned twice daily and pointed to a wet floor sign indicating the bathroom had recently been cleaned. Officers from the police crime scene unit responded, photographed the area, and sampled the blood for testing. I mean, it almost sounded like they weren't going to, like, whatever, parents pointing out blood on the floor. Don't you see the wet floor sign? We clean here, okay? A summary of police interviews. Police interviews of the apartment building concierge, 1/28/11. The concierge reported to police that Ellen's fiancé came to the front desk sometime between 6 and 7 p.m. on 1/26/11. At that time, the fiancé reportedly indicated that he was locked out of his apartment. The concierge described the fiancé as appearing agitated, well, his messages seemed so to Ellen, and sweaty during this trip to the front desk. You know, had been to the gym. Due to their position at the desk, the concierge reported they could only see the fiancé's blue t-shirt and short pants. Although the concierge offered a master key to unlock the apartment door, the fiancé reportedly declined the offer, saying the door was locked from the inside. Okay, I will try to withhold my comments. Did you need an alibi? You needed someone there with you? Okay. The concierge reportedly instructed the fiancé to return to the 6th floor and call out to Ellen while the concierge attempted to call her from the front desk. The fiancé reportedly left the lobby and went towards the elevators. During one of the concierge's multiple attempts to call Ellen, her fiancé reportedly returned to the front desk. According to the concierge, the fiancé appeared a little more agitated than he had at his first visit to the front desk. When the fiancé was informed that there was no tool to open the door latch from the outside, he reportedly requested to speak to the building's maintenance supervisor. The concierge reportedly dialed the maintenance supervisor and gave the phone to Ellen's fiancé. After that phone call, the fiancé reportedly left the front desk again. Shortly after the fiancé left the front desk the second time, firefighters reportedly arrived at the building. The concierge reportedly escorted the firefighters to the elevator and then returned to the front desk until summoned to the 6th floor to speak to the police. When they went to speak with the police on the 6th floor, the concierge described Ellen's fiancé as sitting in the hallway and that he was clearly upset. When asked by police about Ellen's relationship with her fiancé, the concierge described Ellen as being very excited about a package that was arriving, reportedly the wedding invitations. Police interview of the apartment building maintenance supervisor on 1/28/11. The maintenance supervisor was reportedly called by the building concierge around 6:30 p.m. regarding a lockout in 603. The maintenance supervisor reportedly offered the master key to unlock the apartment, to which the concierge replied that they were asking for a tool to unhook the inside door latch to the apartment. The concierge reportedly handed the phone to Ellen's fiancé, who proceeded to explain that the inside door latch was engaged. He reportedly went on to say that he had tried calling Ellen's name and pounding on the door without getting a response. The maintenance supervisor reported that the fiancé indicated he was getting worried about Ellen and asked permission to kick the door down. The maintenance supervisor reportedly replied that kicking wasn't necessary and that the fiancé could shoulder the door open. The maintenance supervisor reportedly told Ellen's fiancé not to worry about the latch, implying consent to shoulder the door open. The maintenance supervisor described Ellen's fiancé as sounding concerned about his fiancé during their discussion. When asked about Ellen's relationship with her fiancé, the maintenance supervisor said, "They lived like a very happy couple." So then they must have been, right? They must have been so happy because the maintenance supervisor said so. Police interview of the apartment building property manager, 1/28/11. The property manager was reportedly notified by the building concierge of an emergency in Unit 603. They reported the notification happening sometime between 6:30 and 6:45 p.m. on 1/26/11. At this point, the concierge reportedly returned to the front desk and the property manager went to the elevators. At the elevators, the property manager reportedly encountered 2 police officers whom they escorted to the 6th floor. On the 6th floor, the property manager reportedly saw Ellen's fiancé sitting in the hallway with other emergency personnel. When a medic exited Unit 603, they reportedly informed the fiancé of Ellen's death. After this notification, the property manager reportedly helped Ellen's fiancé call his family while staying in the hallway with him and the police officers. The property manager reportedly noted that Ellen's fiancé was wearing sneakers while sitting in the hallway. Ah, yeah, I remember he went to the gym in sneakers, okay. The property manager reportedly overheard Ellen's fiancé tell police that Ellen was stressed about work. He gave a narrative right away. Oh my goodness, she was so stressed about her work that she fell on a knife. When police asked him why Ellen would latch the door when he went to use the gym, Ellen's fiancé reportedly responded, "I don't know." Eventually, several members of the fiancé's family reportedly arrived at the apartment building. At this point, the property manager reportedly left the 6th floor and met family members downstairs, keeping them downstairs while awaiting word from the police. When the property manager asked the police if the fiancé's family was allowed to go upstairs to see him, police reportedly responded that no family was permitted upstairs. The property manager then reportedly requested that an officer come downstairs to answer the family's questions. The property manager then reportedly escorted the police to several apartments on the 6th floor so that police could interview the neighbors. At approximately 10:30 p.m., everyone, including Ellen's fiancé, reportedly left the 6th floor, except for one police officer who guarded the door to Unit 603. The fiancé was reportedly witnessed getting into a police vehicle and leaving the premises, with his family following. With his powerful, influential political family following. More police officers reportedly arrived at the apartment building sometime between 2 and 2:30 a.m. to remove Ellen's body and lock the apartment door behind them. On the morning of 1/27/11, the property manager reportedly asked police if they could enter the apartment, which police advised against due to the nature of the scene. The property manager then reportedly requested permission from the police to hire professionals to clean the apartment, which was freaking granted. Why was that granted? Why? Are you already cleaning the apartment? No, you can't actually, they say here. Police advised against due to the nature of the scene, and then please tell us how this makes sense. So the police advise against that. Don't you go to that apartment now, but we want to clean it. Okay, you can do that. You can do that. Go in there and clean it. Get professionals in that place. Police interview of a 6th floor neighbor referred to as Neighbor A, 1/28/11. One neighbor, subsequently referred to as Neighbor A by the undersigned, reportedly exited the elevator onto the 6th floor sometime between 5:30 and 5:45 p.m. on 1/26/11. At this point, Neighbor A reportedly saw Ellen's fiancé in the hallway, knocking on the apartment door and asking to be let inside. After this initial encounter, the neighbor went into the apartment and overheard Ellen's fiancé continuing to knock on his apartment door. After approximately 15 minutes in the apartment, Neighbor A walked back into the hallway and reportedly told the fiancé that the front desk had a master key to unlock the apartment doors. At this point, the fiancé reportedly told Neighbor A that he was locked out because the door was latched from the inside. He really harped on that fact, eh? Didn't want no master key because the door was latched from the inside. Ellen's fiancé reportedly forcibly pushed open the door to show Neighbor A the problem. While this neighbor couldn't see the latch engaged at this point, they reportedly noted the latch reverberating and making noise when the fiancé pushed the door. According to Neighbor A, it was clear that the door was latched. After that encounter, Neighbor A reportedly returned to their apartment. This neighbor estimated that the fiancé had intermittently knocked and asked to be let into the apartment for approximately 1 hour following the neighbor's first sighting of him in the hall. Then, at approximately 6:40 p.m., Neighbor A overheard multiple people talking in the hallway. This neighbor looked out his apartment window and reportedly saw a fire truck in the parking lot. When asked, Neighbor A did not recall hearing unexplained commotions or arguments coming from Unit 603. Police interview of a 6th floor neighbor, referred to as Neighbor B, 1/28/11. Another neighbor, subsequently referred to as Neighbor B by the undersigned, reportedly exited the elevator onto the 6th floor sometime after 6 p.m. At that time, Neighbor B reportedly saw Ellen's fiancé in the hallway, pounding on the door and yelling, "Ellen, Ellen, open the door." This neighbor reportedly saw the fiancé wearing a blue t-shirt, Nike shorts, and Nike FRE shoes. Are those sneakers or other shoes? Which Neighbor B described as really, really light shoes. Approximately 30 minutes later, while in the apartment, this neighbor reportedly overheard Ellen's fiancé in the hallway saying that she was bleeding from the head. and there was a lot of blood, and that there was a knife. Well, there's a red flag, because he claimed to even not, on the 911 call, only when they said, can you administer CPR because your fiance is unresponsive, he's like, oh my God, there's a knife in her chest. She fell onto a knife. But neighbor B is saying 30 minutes later, while in the apartment, this neighbor overheard Ellen's fiance saying she was bleeding from the head, there was a lot of blood, there was a knife. Maybe that's to the 911. Maybe they're referring to the 911 call, but still. Okay. Neighbor B then reportedly overheard the fiance answering questions in the hallway while intermittently sobbing. This neighbor reportedly overheard the fiance tell police that Ellen was depressed about something at school and that she went on medication for this. Ellen's fiance was also reportedly overheard telling police that he should have gone in sooner. But you couldn't get in, so how would you go in sooner then? When asked by police, neighbor B denied ever hearing arguing from apartment 603. Police interview of Ellen's psychiatrist, 1/28/11. Ellen's psychiatrist reported that she only had 3 sessions with Ellen prior to her death. The psychiatrist indicated that Ellen talked about issues related to her being a teacher. According to the psychiatrist, when Ellen spoke of her fiancé during their sessions, that was when she appeared to be happiest. Police interviews of Ellen's friends. Well, damn, that was a short one. Okay. Police interviewed 3 of Ellen's friends during the investigation. All 3 friends described Ellen as being stressed, anxious, and or depressed about her work as a school teacher. The 3 friends offered different time intervals for when Ellen developed this anxiety or stress, varying from the whole year to 3 to 4 months before the incident, to December of 2010. 2 of these friends mentioned Ellen was specifically worried about her students' grades, with a 3rd friend only mentioning Ellen's displeasure over recent unspecified rule changes at Ellen's school. One friend indicated that Ellen's grades were due the week of the incident. The only stressor identified by these interviewed friends was Ellen's work. All 3 friends reported Ellen as being deeply unhappy with her job, saying things like she didn't know if she could do this anymore, she wanted to quit her job, she hated her job, and allegedly telling a friend, maybe I should just get pregnant and I can take off work and not go back. 2 of the interviewed friends described Ellen as being more isolated, that's a red flag to me, disinterested in past hobbies or pastimes, and subdued in the weeks leading up to the fatal incident. One friend noted that during this time frame, Ellen seemed like she couldn't get herself to go to family functions. Yes. Another friend asked Ellen what the cause of her personality change was. Could it be domestic violence? Or, to which Ellen reportedly responded that she was overwhelmed by work and the school's grading system. Ellen also allegedly reported that a medication she was taking may have also played a part in her mood change. One friend reported that Ellen's mom had come to stay with her over some weekends since the onset of Ellen's mood changes. 2 of the interviewed friends reported that Ellen had started seeing a psychiatrist in January of 2011. According to one of these friends, it was Ellen's mother who convinced her to seek treatment. All 3 friends mentioned Ellen being on medications for her mood changes, and that at some point the medications changed due to unspecified side effects. None of the 3 interviewed friends expressed concerns about Ellen's fiancé. One friend described the couple as having a wonderful relationship. Another friend said Ellen loved her fiancé to pieces. The 3rd friend described Ellen's fiancé as a great guy. And while they can all be true, there could still be another side to someone behind closed doors. Could we please just keep that option on the table? What is this narrative of this amazing fiancé? Why is this part of this? Why? You know what I mean? If the manner of death is undetermined, okay. If it's homicide, investigate it. Maybe it's someone other than the fiancé. That's why, to me, this report is quite sus, because there's so much focus on this fiancé. Because, you know, it's kind of like tunnel vision. It can only be him, right? What if it was someone else? What if the door was left unlocked and somebody entered the apartment building? What if Ellen let someone in? You know, thinking it's for a package that she was going to receive. What if it's the delivery guy? I know there's no surveillance of this. I'm just saying this whole freaking narrative of the wonderful fiancé is just pissing me off. Just keep it neutral, okay? I know I'm not being neutral about it, but no, I'm not gonna be. I've looked at this case way too long and hard to be neutral about it. This case is freaking suspicious as hell, okay? It seems like an injustice to me. So, police interview of medic 2511. A medic who responded to the 911 call regarding Unit 603 reportedly saw Ellen's fiancé seated in the 6th floor hallway. The medic described the fiancé as wearing a blue t-shirt and grey sweatpants? What about the shorts? When did he put on the sweatpants? But okay. When did he put on the sweatpants, guys? Did he change his shoes as well? While heading to the apartment, the medic reportedly overheard Ellen's fiancé ask... Okay, wait, this was actually... Yeah, no, it was. At the same day. Moving on. While heading to the apartment, the medic reportedly overheard Ellen's fiancé asking the property manager if Ellen was breathing and if she was okay. After assessing Ellen in the apartment and not seeing the knife in her chest, the medic pronounced her... This was the fiancé. Sorry, I'm talking still about the 911 call. He's just like... Looks at the scene, and then only last minute is like, oh my God, she fell on a knife. Okay, so let's just move on from that. Let's read this. After assessing Ellen in the apartment, the medic pronounced her dead at the scene. While the medic informed the fiancé that Ellen was dead, he reportedly slid down the hallway wall into a seated position and rolled onto the floor saying, I can't believe it. We just sent out the save the date cards. Wow. Okay. Second police interview of Ellen's fiancé 2611. Ellen's fiancé elaborated on his prior statement to police given on the night of the incident. He described Ellen as being very stressed out about school the day of her death, which could be true. She could be stressed out and still be murdered. Specifically, Ellen worked as a first grade teacher and her grades were due. He stated Ellen was trying to work on the day of the incident but seemed unable to concentrate. He described Ellen as seeming to have lost confidence in her teaching abilities at the beginning of the 2010 school year and that this caused her work to take over her life. That sounds like a you problem, bro. You don't like that her work took over her life? Ellen reportedly avoided social events with more frequency near the time of the incident, citing work-related excuses. In January, when Ellen started getting depressed, she reportedly asked her fiancé if he would still love her if she was crazy. He reportedly assured Ellen that love was unconditional. At some point, Ellen also reportedly told her fiancé that she just wanted to feel like her old self again. Ellen was reportedly under the care of a psychiatrist for this work-related stress. Ellen was initially prescribed Zoloft, sertraline, and Ambien, Zolpidem, at first, but reportedly stopped taking the Zoloft, the sertraline, at some point because she said it made her feel lackadaisical and zombie-like. Ellen was then reportedly switched to Xanax, alprazolam. Ellen's fiancé denied knowledge of any prior self-harm or having serious concerns about Ellen's mental state prior to the incident. The only health concerns Ellen had that the fiancé was reportedly aware of were night sweats and episodes of an elevated heart rate. Ellen's fiancé explained that he didn't force entry into the apartment sooner on the day of the incident because he thought perhaps Ellen was in the shower, working with headphones on, or napping. Ellen would reportedly only latch the apartment door shut when she went to sleep or when the fiancé traveled. Reportedly, Ellen did not normally latch the door shut when her fiancé went to the gym. The fiancé reported speaking to a neighbor in the hallway while he was trying to enter the apartment on the night of the incident. This neighbor reportedly suggested that the fiancé go to the front desk to get a spare key. The fiancé reportedly responded that he had his keys, but that the door was latched from the inside. When Ellen's fiancé forced entry into the apartment and called 911, he reportedly agreed to provide CPR with the 911 operator's assistance. When the fiancé prepared to get Ellen lying flat on the floor, he reportedly saw the knife in her chest and informed the 911 operator of the same. The 911 operator reportedly advised him to stop attempting to render aid at that point. The couple reportedly got engaged on June 20th of 2010, and their wedding was planned to take place August 23rd of 2011. Ellen's fiancé denied any prior domestic issue with Ellen requiring police or parental involvement. While at the police department on this date, Ellen's fiancé volunteered a DNA sample for police to use as a comparison to DNA on evidence from the incident. What if she was trying to leave him? What if she didn't want to be with him anymore? What if she thought, let me get a new job because that will mean I'm going to move. I'm going to move back in with my parents, or I'm going to move to another place where I get a new job. That could be an exit strategy. Maybe she didn't want to marry him. Hey, I'm just speculating. Keeping the options open. Police interviews of Ellen's co-workers, 2911. Police interviewed 4 of Ellen's co-workers during the investigation. All 4 of these co-workers independently commented on Ellen's stress in the lead-up to the fatal incident. They each indicated that Ellen was specifically worried about the grades she was giving her students. 2 of these co-workers explained that Ellen's school had changed its grading system, and this made Ellen worry about giving students correct grades. One co-worker further explained that Ellen said she had given some students inflated grades in the hopes of motivating them during the first marking period of the school year. With the new guidelines on grades, she reportedly worried that she would have to give these students lower grades in the second marking period. Ellen reportedly told one co-worker at some point that she told her fiancé that she wanted to quit her job, and that the fiancé reportedly responded that she couldn't quit, but rather work through her issues. I would like to replace the word job with relationship as an option. Why the hell is he saying you can't quit your job? You just have to work on it. Why? Well, isn't he from like a very affluent family? One co-worker reported seeing Ellen in the school parking lot on the day of the incident after the school had been dismissed early for a snowstorm. At this time, this co-worker reported that Ellen was again stressed about grades. According to 2 of these co-workers, at least 2 different teachers at the school had advised her to seek help for her stress. Ellen reportedly told one co-worker that Ellen's own parents had also advised her to see someone for her stress. 3 of the interviewed co-workers reported that Ellen was being treated or about to be treated for her work-related stress. Ellen reportedly told one co-worker that she wasn't sleeping and that the medications she was originally prescribed weren't helping. She reportedly went on to say the changes to her medications were helping. One of the co-workers reported it was hard to console Ellen when she was stressed, and that she seemed very guarded when the topics of counseling and medications were broached. 3 of the interviewed co-workers commented on Ellen's relationship with her fiancé. They described Ellen as being excited about the engagement and upcoming marriage. One co-worker said that Ellen always spoke highly of her fiancé. Another co-worker reported that Ellen had allegedly told another co-worker, not interviewed, that her fiancé was her knight in shining armor. A summary of reviewed texts and phone calls. Call logs for Ellen's phone from 1:26:11 and all text messages between 8:25:10 and 1:26:11 were reviewed by the undersigned. Numbers are either identified as being saved in the phone's contact list or not saved. Numbers in the phone by people's names have been de-identified in this report. Numbers saved in the phone by non-specific labels are listed by the saved label. The call log from 1:26:11 is summarized as follows. Outgoing calls, 1:09 p.m. Call made to coworker per contacts info, lasted almost 15 minutes. 2:33 p.m. Call made to number not saved in contacts, lasted 30 seconds. Internet search links the number to an area restaurant. Upcoming reservation at the same restaurant mentioned in a text exchange between Ellen and a friend, 1:25:11. Incoming calls, none listed for 1:26:11. Missed calls, 5:24 p.m. Call from family friend per contacts info, 5:24 to 5:42. 6 calls from fiancé per contacts info. 5:42 p.m. Call from individual saved in contacts per contacts info. 5:47 to 6:03 p.m. 7 calls from fiancé per contacts info. 6:07 to 6:10 p.m. 4 calls from front desk per contacts info. 6:11 to 6:13 p.m. 2 calls from fiancé per contacts info. 6:21 p.m. Call from front desk per contacts info. And 6:25 p.m. Call from fiancé per contacts info. All text messages from Ellen's cell phone from 8:25:10 to 1:26:11 were reviewed by the undersigned and are summarized by topic in this section of the report. Relationship with the fiancé. Ellen appeared to be in a loving relationship in a loving relationship with her fiancé based on the text messages from her phone. A recurring theme from the text messages was that Ellen was often separated from her fiancé due to the nature of his work. There were no messages in which Ellen mentioned hostility or mistreatment by her fiancé. Ellen never expressed fear of her fiancé, nor did any of her contacts. Mental state and health. There were references in the text message history dating back to 9/23/10 of Ellen being anxious or stressed for unspecified reasons. Related to this anxiety was insomnia, which was severe enough to become a topic of conversation with several of Ellen's family members and friends in her text messages. No mentions of injuries, physical handicaps, or medical conditions aside from psychiatric issues were identified in Ellen's text messages. Work. Based on the text message history, Ellen appeared to be stressed by her work as a teacher, with mentions of this as early as 10/7/10. Multiple times in the messages, Ellen indicated a desire to quit her job. There were multiple references in the text messages regarding her anxiety about grades that were due to be submitted to school administrators on the night of her death. Other potential stressors. Based on text history, Ellen was planning her upcoming wedding. In addition to her regular work at school, she had been attending a class or continuing education course in the evenings. The start and end dates for this course could not be identified in the text messages. Messages on the day that she was stabbed. The following is the last exchange of messages from Ellen's phone. 1:26:11, text exchange with named person per contacts in phone. 1:51 p.m., person, so sick, it's been miserable. Ellen, oh no. And at 2:17 p.m., the person, yeah, feel like I've tried everything, but nothing's working. 2:18 p.m., Ellen, well, that's the thing, it feels that way for a reason. 2:19 p.m., person, I guess, it's not fun though, hopefully it goes away by 12 weeks. 2:19 p.m., Ellen, how many now? 2:20 p.m., person, 7. Ellen, OMG. Person, I know, crazy, right? Person, if I wasn't so sick, I wouldn't believe it. Ellen, bahaha, I love it. When do you go to the doctor? The person at 3:39 p.m. said, Tuesday a.m., maybe then it will seem real. Ellen said, yay. Person, how have you been this week? Ellen, my great, I want to scream. And grades are due. And Ellen said at 3:41 p.m., tonight and can't seem to get them done. The person said, ugh. And then the person said, scan some to me, I'll do after work tonight. Well, that's sweet. They offered help, right? After the above exchange, there were 9 separate unanswered texts from Ellen's fiance between 5:32 and 6:11 p.m. Review of psychiatric records. Now, why didn't they put his messages in here? The ones he sent to her, like open the effing door. You know, he started getting very aggressive towards her in the messages when he could not open the door. Even though he's like, I thought she was sleeping or showering. Put those in the report as well. Oh, but this is a victim blaming report. I see, okay. Records from 3 psychiatric sessions on January 12th, 17th, and 19th, 2011 were reviewed. Records from their first appointment, 1/12/11. In these records, Ellen described feeling anxious for a couple of months before her first session. She denied ever previously feeling as anxious as she was at the time of the sessions. Ellen also described difficulty sleeping, a lack of appetite, decreased concentration, and unintentional weight loss of 5 to 10 pounds. Additionally, there were mentions in the records of possibly compulsive cleaning. These records indicated that Ellen was taking Zoloft, sertraline, and that her dosage was increased at her first appointment. There were references in the records to Ellen feeling overwhelmed by work. Ellen described herself as a hard worker and a perfectionist who felt she was in an impossible situation with constant work and persistent feelings of criticism. Ellen indicated to her psychiatrist that she wanted to quit her job. Is it also to quit her fiancé? Ellen indicated that she was frustrated because she thought she would be happy with her life, but wasn't. The records referenced Ellen's parents as being pretty close and perfectionists who want things in control. The records also suggested that her parents may not have approved of psychiatric medications, something that appears to be corroborated in Ellen's text messages. But earlier said it was Ellen's mom who suggested she go to seek treatment. So again, let's explain those inconsistencies. You get your ass up there at a press conference. Everybody involved in this report, everybody involved in this case, you get your ass up there and explain. Records from second appointment, 1/17/11. At her second appointment, Ellen reported not taking her prescribed medications for sleep because she wanted to keep working instead. The records again referenced Ellen's desire to quit her job as a school teacher, going so far as to outline her contractual obligations if she were to resign. Based on the records, Ellen had even looked for a job, in her hometown. Oh, she wanted to move to her hometown, like away from where she was with fiancé. The records described a previous experience involving work-related stress in which she changed her college degree because she felt unable to do the work required in her original degree. Ellen appeared to attribute her difficulty with work to an inability to maintain focus on her current task. At this second appointment, there was a suggestion to work with her parents, but Ellen reportedly felt like she couldn't do this. Ellen denied feeling like she wanted to self-delete. During the session, the records indicated that Ellen switched from Zoloft, sertraline to Klonopin, clonazepam at this visit. So when it says, okay, at the second appointment, there was a suggestion to work with the parents, but Ellen reportedly felt like she couldn't do this, Maybe she felt like her parents would be worried, would think, why do you want to move away from your fiance? What do you mean? Like, what's going on? What's really going on? Maybe she felt she would be disappointing people, letting them down. Maybe she felt stress. There's so many possibilities. And a lot of red flags. Records from third appointment, 1/19/11. At her third and final appointment, Ellen reported improvement in her symptoms after switching Zoloft sertraline to clonazepam. There were more references to possibly compulsive cleaning habits. At this visit, Ellen allegedly said she was not worrying about parents. It's unclear from the records if this was in reference to her parents or the parents of her students. The records listed a diagnosis code for adjustment disorder with anxiety. Post-mortem testing and results. Serology testing. The following items were tested to assess the presence of human blood. 1 swab of a stain on an upper kitchen cabinet near the microwave oven, 1 swab of a stain from the upper handle of the freezer, 1 swab of a stain from the kitchen countertop near the stove. All tested swabs confirmed the presence of human blood. Fingerprint testing. The knife recovered from Ellen's chest during the autopsy was assessed for latent prints. 2 non-usable prints were found. Oh, was like someone wearing gloves or what? Post-mortem toxicology testing. Forensic toxicology test results revealed subtherapeutic levels of zolpidem and clonazepam in Ellen's blood collected during the autopsy. So you can't blame the medication. Subtherapeutic levels. DNA testing of evidence from the apartment. The following items were tested for DNA. You mean after the cleaning crew was in there? Oh, okay. The underpants on Ellen collected during the autopsy. A swab of the handle of the knife recovered from Ellen's chest at autopsy. A swab of blood stains from the handle of the knife recovered from Ellen's chest at autopsy. A swab of brown stains from the handle of the knife recovered from Ellen's chest at autopsy. A swab of fingernail clippings from Ellen's right hand collected at autopsy and also her left hand. Blood stains from the posterior left sleeve of Ellen's sweatshirt collected at autopsy and also her anterior right sleeve of the sweatshirt. A mixture of at least 2 DNA profiles was recovered from the underpants. The DNA mixture is consistent with having originated from Ellen and her fiance. The odds of selecting someone at random with a similar DNA profile range from 1 in 145.7 million to 1 in 10.92 billion, depending on race or ethnicity. A single DNA profile was detected on the other listed items. The DNA profile is consistent with Ellen's. The odds of selecting someone at random with a similar DNA profile at a range from 1 to all these big numbers, quintillion, okay, yeah. Forensic analysis of computers from the apartment. A report was issued by the Philadelphia Regional Computer Forensics Lab on 3/22/11. The results are as follows. Laptop labeled QPH1, identified by serial numbers belonging to Ellen's fiance. 6 files found by keyword search, self-deletion. And this was, again, let's go again, belonging to Ellen's fiance. 1 HTML file related to a chess application, 1 HTML file from boingboing.html, no title or access date listed, 4 documents saved as last names in folders labeled PGA and LPGA. Laptop labeled QPH2, identified by serial number as belonging to Ellen. 7 files found by keyword search, depressed. 7 HTML files without discernible identifiers listed. 6 files found by keyword search, self-deletion. 6 HTML files without discernible identifiers listed. 1 file found by keyword search, self-deletion methods. 1 HTML file without discernible identifiers. So you're telling me, you're going to say that Ellen, and she might have done these searches, but it's interesting how it's on both laptops. He could have also done the searches on both laptops. I'm just saying, there's many possibilities. This is why there should be an investigation and not this crap. Okay, so the point being, you're telling me the victim is going to search methods, and then that's the method she will choose, is to stab herself in the neck 10 times, the back of her head and neck, and then in her stomach, and then plunge a knife into her own chest. You're telling me she did her homework, and that's what she chose. Laptop labeled QPH3, identified by serial numbers belonging to Ellen. 0 files found by keyword searches, those words, self-deletion, depressed, or methods. Due to the highly technical and specialized terminology used in this report, the undersigned is unable to comment further on the findings in this report. DNA testing of bloodstains in lobby bathroom of the apartment building. A report was issued by Forensic Science Division of the Police Department on 8/11/11. The following items were tested for DNA. A swab of a bloodstain from the bathroom floor, a swab of a bloodstain from the bottom of the bathroom door, a swab of a bloodstain from a toilet paper holder in the bathroom. DNA profiles from these samples were reported as originating from one unidentified male. Both Ellen and her fiancé were excluded as possible sources for the DNA. Consultant reports. Below is a summary of each consultative report, we like bullet points, reviewed by the undersigned. So the first one is by Dr. Cyril Vecht, 1/11/12. Materials reportedly reviewed. Autopsy report with photographs, MEO investigative report and interviews, and psychiatric records for Ellen Greenberg. Findings or opinions from the report. Self-deletion by stabbing rarely have multiple stab wounds. Stab wounds to the posterior neck and head are unlikely to be from doing it to oneself. To oneself may have cuts or tentative stabbings to see if it hurts or to work up courage. Usually have one significant wound, most likely to the chest. A victim of this will frequently leave a note. There was none. No prior indication of ideation to family, friends, co-workers, and psychiatrist. Victims of this rarely stab themselves through their clothing. Final conclusion from report, based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty, the manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide. Letter from Dr. Wayne Ross to Thomas P. Brennan, 10/18/16. Materials reportedly reviewed, not specified. Support for final conclusion, none offered. Final conclusion from the letter. It is my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the manner of death is homicide. Okay, we've got two saying homicide already there. Consultative report by Dr. Wayne Ross, 1/10/17. Materials reportedly reviewed, retained tissue from the autopsy, scene photographs, autopsy report, autopsy photographs. Findings or opinions from the letter. A stab wound penetrated the skull cavity, cranial nerves, and brain. This injury would have caused severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and any of a number of findings of brain injury. There are fingernail marks on the front of the neck. There are multiple bruises under the neck and in the strap muscles over the right side of the neck. Yeah, did you hear that? The findings of the neck are evidence of strangulation and are compatible with manual strangulation. Bruises on the body in various stages of healing are consistent with a repeated beating. Final conclusion from the report. The scene findings were indicative of a homicide. And again, at the end of this report, they're like, yeah, no, she did it to herself. Consultative report by Detective Scott Eelman, 4/14/17. Materials reportedly reviewed, autopsy photographs, scene photographs, autopsy report, MEO's investigative report, and the consultative report by Dr. Cyril Vecht. Findings or opinion from the report. The bloodstains on Ellen's face are inconsistent with the position her body was in when she was found. Yeah. The bloodstains on the front of Ellen's clothes are consistent with Ellen being seated with her head tipped forward when the stains were made. The blood staining on the floor at the scene was minimal compared to the blood staining on Ellen's clothes. There is a patterned blood stain near Ellen's right hand, which may be consistent with a shoe print or something else. If Ellen's boot had made a print in the blood, there would be other similar patterned prints on the floor corresponding to her footsteps. Final conclusion from the report. Ellen was not in the position in which she was found when injuries occurred. Yeah, meaning a huge red flag. Right? Consultative report by Miss Elaine Paglario and Henry Lee, PhD, of the Henry C. Lee Institute of Forensic Science, 1/29/18. Materials reportedly reviewed, case reports not otherwise specified, and photographs. Findings or opinions from the report. The kitchen of the apartment is consistent with the primary scene of the incident. The swipe patterns in the blood on the lower kitchen cabinets are consistent with having been formed when Ellen fell to the floor. No defensive type wounds can be seen. Blood stains on Ellen and in the kitchen are consistent with her having been upright in the kitchen when she received some of her injuries. Like a blitz attack, which also nobody heard any screams. In a blitz attack, they might not. If she was doing this to herself, they would probably hear her in pain. Because the neighbors could friggin' hear, fiance talking, walking, saying things to 911 in the apartment, knocking on the door, all of that, right? There's no indication of cleaning in the area of Ellen's right hand. Blood flowing in different directions on Ellen's face could mean that she moved after receiving bleeding injuries. The blood-stain patterns indicate that she, Ellen, was in a standing position when she received her initial injuries. Subsequently, she was on the floor with her head leaning forward. Final conclusion from the report: the number and type of wounds and blood-stain patterns are observed as consistent with the homicide scene. Biomechanical analysis by Michael Woodhouse, PhD of MX Consulting, 5/12/21. Materials reportedly reviewed: autopsy report with photographs, scene investigative reports, reconstructed 3D computer modeling results, photogrammetric and mathematical dynamic modeling results, and medical reports provided by Dr. Wayne Ross. Findings or opinions from the report: stab wounds on the posterior head and neck are not consistent with self-infliction. I mean, aren't these clues of what your conclusion could be? Self-infliction of multiple posterior head and neck wounds would require multiple dynamic movements of the wrist and elbow, which is not biomechanically probable. Injuries to the posterior head and neck would have disrupted the body's proprioceptors such that Ellen would have impaired coordinated motor activity. Injuries to the chest and abdomen would result in impaired motor function and are therefore not consistent with self-infliction. Contusions of the extremities in various stages of healing are consistent with assailant-oriented trauma, not self-infliction. Final conclusion from the report: Ms. Greenberg's manner of death is not biomechanically consistent with her doing it to herself. Consultative report by Dr. Wayne Ross, 6/1/21. Materials reportedly reviewed: scene photographs, autopsy report, autopsy photographs, investigative reports, photogrammetry and videotape of lobby, histology slides prepared for the spinal cord, pleadings, depositions by Drs. Osborne, Galino, and Emery, and reports by Detective Eelman and Drs. Vecht and Lee. Findings and opinions from the report: the apartment door's lock is disturbed from the inside. Scene findings are not consistent with a true self-deletion, but are consistent with a staged one. The blood evidence at the scene is inconsistent with her doing it to herself. Absence of cast-off blood spatter consistent with control. Injuries of the brain, cranial nerves, intracranial blood vessels, and spinal cord will cause extreme pain, which is inconsistent with her doing it to herself. No prior ideation or attempts. No incised wounds on arms or hands is inconsistent with her doing it to herself. The hesitation wounds on the head and chest are due to staging the scene. Thank you. I like these doctors. Ellen was incapacitated by strangulation. That's the second one to say that. Contusions on wrists consistent with defensive wounds or binding to wrists. Contusions of the legs consistent with defensive wounds. Older contusions on the extremities indicative of abuse. Ellen was not under the influence of drugs or had any disease to result in self-unaliving. Oh, I don't like that word, unaliving. Self-deletion. A perforation of the cervical spinal dura did not have hemorrhage identified post-mortem, and therefore the injuries were inflicted after Ellen was dead. Histology of the spinal cord defect showed soft tissue hemorrhage but no cellular reaction in the spinal cord itself. Histology of the brain showed hemorrhage. Histology of the cerebellum showed spongiosis. Final conclusion from the report: the necessary degree of medical certainty to support the selection of self-deletion as a manner of Ellen's death is patently lacking. Consultative report by Dr. Jonathan Arden, 7/1/24. Materials reportedly reviewed. Findings and opinions: report of examination, toxicology report, report of death investigation, autopsy photographs, scene photographs, death certificate, amended death certificate. Consultative reports from Drs. Ross, Vecht, Lee, and Woodhouse, depositions of Drs. Osborne, Galino, and Emery, and a declaration from the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. Findings and opinions from the report: the OAG reportedly analyzed Ellen's laptop and found evidence that she had searched the internet for topics relating to self-deletion. What if someone else had used a laptop to search those same things? Autopsy findings, especially since they and their relatives took those laptops to the relative's house for unknown reasons. Autopsy findings must be interpreted in the context of the investigation and circumstances of death to reach accurate conclusions. There was no injury to the spinal cord that would have prevented Ellen from inflicting injuries to herself. Since all injuries had associated soft tissue hemorrhage, they were inflicted while Ellen was alive. Ellen had no defensive wounds on her body. Okay, these are like opposite reports now. Different opinions. We like different opinions. We like to debate. We want the truth. Ellen could have reached all the areas on her body that were injured. While stab wounds to the posterior head and neck are atypical of self-deletion, they are not physically inconsistent with being self-inflicted. Final conclusion from the report, the manner of death is this one. Report by Dr. Jonathan Arden says she did it to herself. Consultative report by Dr. Wayne Ross, 7/22/24. Materials reportedly reviewed as in previous consult with additional depositions. Findings and opinions from the report. It would be biomechanically impossible for Ellen to inflict all her injuries. The pain caused by the injuries would have functionally incapacitated Ellen. Reportedly, the FBI analyzed Ellen's laptops and found no material relating to self-deletion. A key element, yeah, exactly, when were those searches made, huh? A key element of the situation is whether or not the fiancé was witness to forced entry into the apartment. The lack of hemorrhage in the cervical spine dura indicates the injury was inflicted post-mortem. Leaving the manner of death as self-done prevents any official investigation into the death. There was originally swelling in the cervical spinal cord, but the swelling dissipated after the autopsy. Final conclusion from the report, Ellen did not take herself out. Consultative report by Dr. Jonathan Arden, 10/10/24. Material reportedly reviewed as above, and consultative report by Dr. Ross from 7/22/24. Findings and opinions in the report. Wounds to the posterior head and neck could be self-inflicted. People are known to self-inflict painful injuries without the pain incapacitating them from further action. You get your ass up there as well, sir, and you tell us, you demonstrate. It is well known that people who die by self-deletion may not leave notes or outwardly manifest signs concerning ideation. Analysis of Ellen's computer reportedly found internet searches for methods of doing that, quick death, and depression. Autopsy photographs show hemorrhage in the soft tissue and epidural space of the cervical spine. Injuries of the spinal cord occurring shortly before death may have little to almost no hemorrhage. Final conclusion from the report, the manner of death of Miss Greenberg is, and this Dr. Jonathan Arden is sticking to, she did it to herself. It should be noted that none of the consultants indicated having reviewed the police records, and only one of the consultants reviewed Ellen's psychiatric records. Okay. Synthesis of the reviewed materials, circumstances leading up to Ellen's death. Ellen was last seen by someone other than her fiancé at her work parking lot by a co-worker in the afternoon on January 26th. At that time, Ellen expressed concern to this co-worker about submitting her students' grades, which were due at the end of the day. The last text messages sent from Ellen's phone at 3:41 p.m. expressed frustration about not being able to finish the necessary paperwork for grade submission. In the fiancé's statement to police, he noted that when he left the apartment at approximately 4:45 p.m. that day, Ellen was working on preparing these grades. While the time of Ellen's last activity on her work computer was not independently verified by the undersigned, the time of 4:46 p.m. reported by a recent documentary would seem to corroborate the fiancé's statement to police. Why is the jackass going to the gym instead of helping her with something that she's so stressed about? I'm just saying. You know? He can go look after his health. You can go to the gym. But if you're like, oh my word, I was so worried, she was so worried, due date, deadlines, can't you help at all? Ellen's anxiety related to work was a recurring theme throughout all the reviewed interviews of family, friends, and co-workers. This anxiety was also documented throughout her text messages and by her psychiatrist in the days leading to her death. Her anxiety was severe enough to cause unintentional weight loss and insomnia, as documented in her psychiatric records. The insomnia was particularly troubling to Ellen based on her text messages. On 1/8/11, Ellen texted someone indicating that she was going to start taking medicine for the anxiety. Based on the other text messages and psychiatric records, this would correspond with Ellen starting to use the antidepressant Zoloft, sertraline. By psychiatric records, text messages, and interviews of family and friends, Ellen did not feel that the Zoloft, sertraline was helping. On 1/17/11, Ellen stopped taking Zoloft, sertraline, and started taking clonazepam. While the Klonopin did appear to help with the insomnia based on her text messages, there's no evidence in the records that Ellen was receiving any additional medication or therapy to address her underlying anxiety at that point. And okay, they make a good point there. You can't just give the patient a pill. Psychiatrists will, but I mean, isn't there treatment? Do you know what I mean? There's just side snark at, mental health care sometimes. No concerns regarding the fiance's treatment of Ellen were reported in MEO interviews, police interviews, or in Ellen's psychiatric records. No text messages were sent by Ellen that indicated an unhappy, unsafe, or abusive relationship. None of the interviewed family, friends, or co-workers mentioned Ellen having suspicious and or unexplained injuries. On the contrary, multiple people described Ellen and her fiancé as being in a loving relationship. To date, no motive for the fiancé to harm Ellen has been provided to the undersigned for consideration. So you mean that she wants to quit her job and move back to her hometown? That couldn't be a motive? That she wants to leave him? The bruises in various stages of healing and her suffering in silence, that can't be a motive? That she's like, you know what, I can't. Just because it's not on the text, you think it's not there? Could be. For all we know. It might not be, but it could be. The scene of the incident. In some cases, by the way, we also see that some people, fiancés or not, find new love interests or are caught out for cheating. Right? You just never know. There's all sorts of funny motives that could be at play. The scene of the incident. Ellen was found lying supine in the corner on the kitchen floor with her head and shoulders resting against the lower kitchen cabinets. A knife was lodged in her upper left chest. Blood evidence experts who consulted on the case opined that the kitchen in the apartment was consistent with the primary scene of the incident. These same consultants also opined that based on the blood evidence, Ellen was likely in a standing position when she received the initial injuries to her body and that she was subsequently on the floor with her head leaning forward. These experts also opined that the blood patterns on Ellen's face could be consistent with her moving after the injuries to her head were received. Okay. The undersigned agrees with these three opinions. Since Ellen was likely moving her body, she could have also been moved. The scene could have also been staged. Since Ellen was likely moving her body during the fatal incident, it is reasonable to conclude that the blood patterns on Ellen's face happened while she was alive and moving her body. The only footprint visible in the blood in the kitchen was consistent with Ellen's own boot. The blood evidence at the scene is not consistent with that of a frenzied attack with rapidly repeated stabs. This is because there was minimal blood found above the level of the kitchen countertop by the MEO investigator and by police who responded the evening of the incident. Bring in the luminol. This opinion is supported by the injuries noted at autopsy. See findings from autopsy below. Dr. Wayne Ross, who consulted on the case, similarly found no evidence of a frenzied or rapidly occurring attack. They mean like a blitz attack. The only bloody sharp implement found at the scene of the incident was the knife lodged in Ellen's chest. The MEO investigator at the scene documented that both the kitchen sink and the knives in the sink were without visible blood or tissue, because they can't be rinsed. This investigator also documented that the same sink was dry, because that can't be dried, at the time of the investigation, indicating that it had not been recently used. Did they mention the fruit salad though, at all? No blood was found on the floors of the apartment outside of the kitchen. No bloody clothing or evidence to suggest a clean and staged scene were found in the apartment by the MEO investigator or police who responded to the apartment on the night of Ellen's death. None of the reviewed consultative reports documented evidence of a second weapon being used to cause injuries on Ellen's body. It is the opinion of the undersigned that there was insufficient time to both inflict all the injuries on Ellen's body and clean up any evidence from their commission, such that the evidence was undetectable by the time emergency personnel arrived at the apartment. See updated timeline of events 1/26/11 below. No consultative reports reviewed by the undersigned document evidence of a second weapon being used in the incident. Based on this collective information, it is most reasonable to conclude that the knife lodged in Ellen's chest was the only weapon used to inflict her fatal injuries. There was no evidence of an unknown individual gaining access to Ellen's apartment on the date of her death. Multiple valuables were present in the apartment when Ellen's body was discovered, and no valuables were subsequently reported as being missing. The only finding at the apartment consistent with a struggle was the overturned knife block on the kitchen counter. The only evidence of forced entry was the partially detached door latch. Based on the police interview of neighbor A, the door was latched as of approximately 5:45 or 6 p.m. Only one resource reviewed by the undersigned mentioned the fiancé reportedly being witness to forced entry into the apartment on the night of Ellen's death. That resource, the MEO investigator's report, conflicted with itself as to whether the fiancé's entry into the apartment was in fact witnessed. It also provided no specific name or title for the individual who may have witnessed the entry, nor did it specify whether this information was provided by the fiancé or by the police at the scene. None of the other resources reviewed, including 2 separate interviews of the fiancé by police, stated or claimed that entry into the apartment was witnessed. This information, combined with surveillance video and keycard swipes, indicates the fiancé was indeed alone. Oh, you don't know that if there's no evidence of it. There could be evidence of something else, but okay, indicates the fiancé was indeed alone when he forced entry into the apartment. Updated timeline of events, 1/26/11. The previously reported timeline of events on January 26th is restated here, with pertinent additions from the available interviews and investigative results. It should be noted that there's an approximate 4-minute variation between the cited sources. Any time that is estimated during an interview will be labeled as approx. 1:32 p.m. Ellen enters the parking garage of the apartment complex per keycard swipe. 1:51 p.m. Final text message exchange between Ellen and a friend begins with a message from the friend. 1:53 p.m. Fiancé enters the parking garage of the apartment complex per keycard swipe. 2:16 p.m. Text message sent by Ellen in final text message exchange. And that sentence is between her and the friend between 2:16 p.m. and 2:33 p.m. At 2:33 p.m., call made from Ellen's cell phone to a number not saved in contacts. Internet search links the number to an area restaurant. Upcoming reservation at the same restaurant mentioned in a text exchange between Ellen and a friend on 1/25/11. 3:39 p.m. Text message sent by friend in final text message exchange, and that goes to 3:41 p.m. At 3:41 p.m., last 3 text messages sent by Ellen in final text message exchange. 4:45 p.m. approximately. Fiancé reported to police leaving the apartment at this time. Okay, so what happened between 3:41 p.m. and 4:45 p.m. is already a question I have. That's an hour and 4 minutes. Okay, that, you know what I'm saying. That's a lot of time. Fiancé reported to police leaving the apartment at this time to go to the gym, per his police interview. Ellen was reportedly working on grades for work when he left. How do you know? Was she already attacked? 4:46 p.m. Approx. Last activity on Ellen's work laptop. Oh, so approximately 4:45, the fiancé is leaving to the gym, and at 4:46, there's Ellen's last work on a laptop per recent documentary, information not verified by the undersigned. But so he could have also gone at 4:50, because at 4:51 he entered the gym. So what if he did a last little self-deletion search on her laptop? Okay, 4:51 p.m. Fiancé enters the gym of the apartment building per keycard swipe, corroborated by surveillance video in the lobby. 5:30 p.m. Fiancé on surveillance video leaving the gym and walking toward the concierge desk in the lobby of the apartment building. 5:31 p.m. Fiancé on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator while reading the mail. From 5:30 to 5:45, neighbor A from the 6th floor reported seeing Ellen's fiancé trying to enter his apartment, per the police interview. Neighbor A reportedly overheard the fiancé continuing to attempt to gain access intermittently for approximately 1 hour after this first encounter, per police interview. From 5:45 to 6 p.m., neighbor A reported going back into the 6th floor hallway and seeing Ellen's fiancé continue to try to enter the apartment, per their police interview. Neighbor A reported that the fiancé demonstrated to them that the internal door latch was engaged, per the police interview. Quote from neighbor A, police statement regarding the apartment door. It was clear the door was latched. 6 p.m. approx. Neighbor B from the 6th floor reported seeing Ellen's fiancé trying to enter his apartment, per the police interview. Neighbor B reported seeing the fiancé wearing a blue t-shirt, black shorts, and athletic shoes. So what about the sweatpants and the sneakers? When did that come into play? Concierge offers to call Ellen on the phone while the fiancé continues to try to gain entry, per the concierge's police interview, corroborated by phone logs. Fiancé described as sweaty and wearing a blue t-shirt and shorts, per the concierge's police interview. 6:13 p.m. Fiancé on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:25 p.m. Fiance on surveillance video leaving a lobby elevator. Fiance reported speaking to the concierge and maintenance supervisor per his police interview. Corroborated by police interviews of the concierge and maintenance supervisor. Fiance advised by the maintenance supervisor to shoulder in the apartment door per his police interview. Corroborated by police interview with the maintenance supervisor. At 6:31 p.m., the fiancé on surveillance video walking through the apartment building lobby while talking on a cell phone. I wonder to who. At 6:33 p.m., fiancé on surveillance video getting on an elevator. At 6:33 p.m., 911 called by the fiancé. 6:35 p.m., medics responded. Fiancé described as wearing a blue t-shirt and sweatpants. Per the medic's police interview, 6:37 p.m., could he have just gone in, grabbed his sweatpants? Sure, but when? At what point did you grab the sweatpants? And why? I thought you were performing CPR. Did you wash your hands and then put on the sweatpants? Okay, 6:42 p.m. Firemen on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:45 p.m. Police officer on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. 6:47 p.m. Medics on surveillance video getting on a lobby elevator. Findings from the autopsy. Due to the large volume of material to be reviewed and discussed, components of the autopsy findings are discussed in separate sections. Before you give your final opinion, huh? That she did it to herself. Dr. Osborne documented 20 separate stab and incised wounds on Ellen's central chest, upper abdomen, posterior scalp, and neck. The undersigned found 3 additional superficial stab wounds on Ellen's chest, right neck, and posterior neck, which were omitted from Dr. Osborne's report. The wounds were in clusters on the posterior scalp or neck, right neck, and central chest or upper abdomen. Other than mental health issues, Ellen was a You mean anxiety? But okay, yes, okay. Ellen was a healthy 27-year-old woman with no physical handicaps at the time of her death. There was no mention in the materials provided of Ellen having a physical disability or limited range of motion in her neck, shoulders, or upper extremities. Based on this collective information, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the locations of the injuries could be self-inflicted or could be inflicted by others. Yes, okay. The locations of the... Thank you for keeping an open mind there. Or could be inflicted by others, self or others. The locations of the injuries themselves do not rule out self-deletion or homicide as the manner of death. Okay, then make it undetermined. Stab wound of the left chest. The stab wound of the left chest resulted in perforations of Ellen's aorta and lung, which is documented in the autopsy photographs. There was a total of 1,220 mils of blood in her chest cavities associated with this wound. This indicates Ellen was alive when the stab wound was inflicted. The hemorrhage adjacent to the perforations of the aorta and lung seen in the autopsy photographs confirms this. A knife was recovered from the same wound. The copious amount of internal bleeding associated with the stab wound indicates Ellen was alive when the knife was lodged in Ellen's chest. Since the knife in Ellen's chest was the only weapon used to inflict her injuries, see the scene of the incident section, this indicates that the stab wound with the lodged knife was the last stab or incised wound inflicted. Based on all these findings, it is most reasonable to conclude that Ellen was alive when all the stab and incised wounds on her body were inflicted. This is corroborated by the fact that autopsy photographs show hemorrhage in each stab and incised wound, either at the skin surface or the underlying soft tissues. Stab wound of the posterior or right neck. A stab wound on the back or right side of Ellen's neck was documented at autopsy. Per the autopsy report, this wound was associated with perforations of the muscles and dura of the cervical spinal cord. After the removal of Ellen's cervical spinal cord, a defect in the cord was found and documented photographically. Forensic pathologists Dr. Wayne Ross and Lindsay Emery examined histologic slides of the spinal cord defect at different points of the investigation in this case. After reviewing the spinal cord tissue histology, they both concluded that the spinal cord showed no signs of a reaction to the defect. Their opinions explaining this finding are different. Dr. Ross's most recent consultative report suggested that the histological findings support a conclusion that Ellen was dead when this defect was created, and that it was created during the course of an attack, making her manner of death homicide. During her deposition, Dr. Emery offered 3 possible explanations for the spinal cord defect. There was a short time between when this injury occurred and when death occurred, such that the body did not have enough time to react to the injury. Or the spinal cord defect was an injury inflicted by another after Ellen was dead. The spinal cord defect was an artifact created during the autopsy. A table from Detmeyer's textbook on forensic histopathology, provided to the undersigned by Dr. Wayne Ross, describes wounds incurred shortly before or after death as having the same histological appearance. Page 245, table 10.3. Based on this information, it is the opinion of the undersigned that histology of the spinal cord by itself cannot reasonably explain when or how the spinal cord defect was created. The photographs of the spinal cord after formalin fixation show the defect, which appears to involve the posterior or left side of the spinal cord and appears to be superficial. It is the opinion of the undersigned that Ellen was alive when all the stab and incised wounds were inflicted. See stab wound on the left of the left chest section. Therefore, it is most reasonable to reach one of two conclusions about the spinal cord defect. Either the spinal cord defect was actually an artifact from the original autopsy, or that Ellen was alive when this spinal cord defect was caused. While the undersigned cannot say with absolute certainty which of these two conclusions for the spinal cord defect is the correct one, the preponderance of the evidence suggests the defect was an artifact from the autopsy. Both possibilities will be discussed. There are findings to suggest the defect of the spinal cord was an artifact created during the autopsy. All right. The defect of the spinal cord, as seen in the post-mortem photographs, can be best described as cylindrical in shape and having irregular edges. This description does not correspond to an incised injury, nor does the defect resemble the incisions made in the spinal cord during the examination. The description of the spinal cord defect better corresponds to a defect caused by a blunt instrument. Given the dimensions of the defect, a probe could reasonably have created the defect. A post-mortem photograph showing a probe next to the spinal cord defect corroborates this opinion. As there are multiple autopsy photographs showing probes inserted into different injured organs and structures, it would be reasonable to conclude that a probe used during the autopsy inadvertently created the spinal cord defect. Why is that the most reasonable option? What about the other option? Okay, the area of the spinal cord defect normally carries sensory information from the body to the brain. If this defect were a true antemortem injury, it would not have incapacitated Ellen, nor would it have prevented her from continuing to move after it was inflicted. Combining all the information on this stab wound, it is the opinion of the undersigned that this wound in isolation cannot exclude self-deletion or homicide as the manner of Ellen's death. Okay, then make it undetermined. Locations of the stab and incised wounds, defensive injuries. Were the stab and incised wounds on Ellen's body inflicted by another, one would expect to see additional stab or incised wounds on Ellen's arms and or hands due to Ellen trying to fend off her attacker, so-called defensive injuries. However, stab and incised wounds were only found in clusters on Ellen's head, neck, and central chest or upper abdomen. No stab or incised wounds were found anywhere else on Ellen's body. While the absence of defensive injuries does not eliminate the possibility of homicide, the lack of defensive injuries must be explained by a blitz attack, by strangulation first. The four most common explanations for a lack of defensive injuries are: the attack happened so quickly, that the victim did not have time, a blitz attack, to defend themselves. The victim was intoxicated, such that the intoxication impaired their ability to defend themselves. The victim was physically restrained. Oh, you mean like the contusions on her knees and wrists, which suggested restraint from some other doctor in this report? The victim sustained an injury early in the lethal sequence of events that was severe enough to prevent them from moving during the rest of the attack. Each of the above explanations will be discussed. As previously discussed in the context of the scene, see the scene of the incident section, the blood evidence at the scene was not consistent with that of a rapidly inflicted attack. It is the opinion of the undersigned that there was insufficient time between when Ellen was last alive and when emergency personnel responded to thoroughly clean the blood evidence. But what happened from 3:41 to like 6:40 p.m.? Okay, let's read that sentence again. It is the opinion of the undersigned that there was insufficient time between when Ellen was last alive and when emergency personnel responded to thoroughly clean the blood evidence following such a rapid attack that it was undetectable to trained death investigators first responders and police. The injuries on Ellen's body are also inconsistent with that of a rapidly inflicted attack. In a frenzied or rapidly occurring attack, the knife is often incompletely retracted from the victim's skin. This results in stab wounds with adjacent incised wounds as the knife scrapes across the skin. No such injuries were found on Ellen's body. It's the opinion of the undersigned that a rapid or frenzied attack is not a reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive injuries on Ellen's body. This opinion is shared by Dr. Wayne Ross, who consulted on the case. Post-mortem toxicology testing of Ellen's blood only detected subtherapeutic levels of zolpidem, Ambien, and clonazepam. Ellen's internal organs did not show signs typical of sedative intoxication, such as pulmonary edema or cerebral vascular congestion. Dr. Wayne Ross, who consulted on the case, similarly noted that Ellen had no history of controlled substance abuse, nor were there controlled substances detected by toxicology. It's the opinion of the undersigned that intoxication is not a reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive injuries on Ellen's body. Dr. Wayne Ross opined that Ellen was physically incapacitated by the binding of her wrists. It is the opinion of the undersigned that the round contusions on Ellen's forearms are not consistent with binding by ligature. While the shape of the contusions on Ellen's forearms could hypothetically be caused by fingers, the undersigned only identified 3 contusions on Ellen's right forearm and 3 on Ellen's left forearm. This would indicate an incomplete grip on the forearms if the contusions were indeed caused by fingers. Also, the contusions on the right forearm appeared to the undersigned to be of different ages. Based on this collective information, it's the opinion of the undersigned that Ellen was not restrained by her arms at the time of this fatal incident. Dr. Wayne Ross also opined that Ellen was incapacitated by strangulation. The 2 extremely small contusions on the anterior and right side of Ellen's neck could hypothetically be caused by fingers. However, they are not in anatomic locations that would compress the blood vessels of the neck. There were also no petechiae on Ellen's face or conjunctivae, nor were there fractures of Ellen's hyoid or larynx. Based on this information, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the findings at autopsy were not consistent with strangulation. Combining the provided information, it's the opinion of the undersigned that physical restraint is not a reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive injuries on Ellen's body. The last explanation to discuss is the possibility of an incapacitating injury occurring early enough in the lethal sequence of events to prevent Ellen from defending herself from an attacker. The only stab or incised wounds causing significant internal injuries were those of the left chest, posterior right neck, central lower chest, upper abdomen, and posterior neck or head. And they say the only. It is the opinion of the undersigned that the stab wound of the left chest was the last sustained injury and therefore could not explain the lack of defensive injuries. See stab wound of the left chest section. As previously discussed, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the stab wound of the posterior or right neck would not have incapacitated Ellen. See stab wound of the right or posterior neck section. The stab wounds of the central chest and upper abdomen resulted in injuries to Ellen's liver and mesentery, respectively. As there were hemorrhages documented in both wound tracts, Ellen was clearly alive when they occurred. However, the bleeding caused by these injuries would take time to render Ellen unconscious. Injuries of the liver or mesentery would not incapacitate Ellen such that she could not defend herself for at least a short period of time. The remaining stab wound with notable internal injury was that of the posterior head or neck. The knife that created this wound entered Ellen's skull cavity and perforated superficial blood vessels overlying the basal surfaces of her brain. As previously noted, the undersigned also identified a superficial incision in the right middle cerebellar peduncle that was omitted from the autopsy report. I'm sorry if I mispronounced some of these medical words. The perforation of these structures resulted in focal subarachnoid hemorrhage on the basal surfaces of the brain, which indicates she was alive when this injury occurred. Since it's the opinion of the undersigned that the last stab wound sustained was that of the left chest, and that Ellen was alive during all the stab and incised wounds, see previous discussions, it's almost reasonable to conclude that Ellen survived the stab wound. Dr. Wayne Ross, who consulted on the case, noted that the weapon causing this injury severed the cranial nerves and brain, which would be inconsistent with locomotion and motor activity. However, he offered no details about what specific structures of the brain or cranial nerves he found to be damaged, nor how he reached the conclusion that Ellen would have been rendered motionless by them. While the injury to the right middle cerebellar peduncle may have decreased Ellen's coordination in the right side of her body, it's the opinion of the undersigned that it would not have incapacitated her to the point that she was defenseless. After reviewing the likely causes for a lack of defensive wounds, it's the opinion of the undersigned that there is no reasonable explanation for the lack of defensive wounds on Ellen's body. Superficial stab wounds on the body. A total of 11 of these wounds, 8 documented by Dr. Osborne, 3 described by the undersigned, were extremely small and shallow. A consultant on the case, Dr. Wayne Ross, opined that these injuries were inflicted after Ellen was dead as a way to cover up her murder. However, there's hemorrhage visible in the photographs for all these superficial wounds, whether on the skin surface or in the underlying soft tissues. Therefore, it's the opinion of the undersigned that Ellen was alive when these shallow wounds were inflicted. In the context of a stabbing death, multiple superficial stab wounds are most commonly inflicted in a controlled setting. These superficial wounds could be caused by the victim stabbing themselves to test how painful the injuries might be, so-called hesitation wounds, or could be inflicted by someone else while the victim was somehow incapacitated or restrained. As discussed in the previous section, the undersigned did not find evidence that Ellen was in any way incapacitated or restrained at the time of the fatal incident. See locations of the stab and incised wounds, defensive injury section. Based on this, it is most reasonable to conclude that the shallow stab wounds on Ellen's body are most consistent with hesitation wounds from self-infliction. Blunt impact injuries. Dr. Osborne described 11 contusions on Ellen's lower abdomen, right upper arm, right forearm, and right thigh, and indicated they were in different stages of healing. By review of the autopsy photographs, the undersigned identified 20 additional contusions on Ellen's forehead, neck, torso, and extremities, which were omitted from the autopsy report. Of the 31 total contusions, that's a lot, on Ellen's body, the contusions of Ellen's forearms and neck were previously discussed. See locations of the stab and incised wounds, defensive injury section. The contusions of Ellen's forehead, lower chest, and right upper arm appeared in the autopsy photographs to be healing. The remaining 21 contusions on Ellen's body were at hip level or lower, and most of these contusions appear to be healing. It is the opinion of the undersigned that the contusions on Ellen's body are not consistent with those sustained from intentional infliction by another. The distribution is, however, consistent with incidental contact sustained during activities of daily living, including work as a first-grade teacher. Oh, blame the first graders, okay. And here we go, final page, final analysis by this medical examiner. Final analysis of Ellen's death. To summarize the entirety of this report, Ellen Greenberg was a young woman suffering from anxiety at the time of her death. The anxiety appeared mostly to be due to her work as a teacher. She was specifically worried that the grades she needed to submit on the day of her death would indicate that she had previously given inflated grades to her students. She expressed this anxiety about her grades to friends, co-workers, and her fiancé in the hours leading up to her death. She was under the care of a psychiatrist for this anxiety. While her recent change in medications had helped with the insomnia associated with her anxiety, she did not survive long enough to address the anxiety herself, or itself. Thus, she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. Okay, right. Or she had an increase in energy to act on her anxious thoughts. Ellen was found dead in her apartment with 23 stab and incised wounds. These wounds were limited to her posterior head or neck, right neck, and central front torso. While the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself. Many of these stab and incised wounds would be best categorized as hesitation wounds. No defensive injuries were identified on her body. There was no evidence to indicate that Ellen was incapacitated or incapable of defending herself. The fiancé's DNA was not detected on the knife used to inflict the injuries. His self-reported timeline of events is corroborated by phone logs, text messages, surveillance footage, keycard swipes, and police interviews. No evidence was provided to indicate that Ellen was in an abusive relationship with her fiancé. There was no evidence of a third party being in the apartment on the day of Ellen's death, nor was anyone else's DNA detected on the knife used to inflict the injuries on Ellen's body. No findings of a struggle were found at the scene, and no valuables were reported missing from the apartment. With all of this information considered, it is the opinion of the undersigned that the manner of Ellen Greenberg's death is best classified as self-deletion. After all that, that's what you come to? That she did it to herself? All opinions stated in this report are expressed with a reasonable degree of medical certainty. The undersigned reserves the right to amend any statements or opinions if presented with additional significant information. Dr. Lindsay Simon, Chief Medical Examiner of Philadelphia. And that, everybody, is the end of the document, the very heartbreaking, frustrating report. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the matter in the comments section below. My heart goes out to Ellen Greenberg's family, to her parents, to her friends. This is so devastating. After 14 years of fighting, even just for an undetermined manner of death, this medical examiner comes back with they think that it's, and they're entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Yeah, no, we're going to need some demonstrations. Explain how it's possible for someone to do that to themselves and why someone would ever think that up. To do that to themselves, like how would it go? And how would the scene look the way it looked? All of it. There's a lot of explaining, right, to do. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you made it to the end of the video. I really appreciate you. If you're a replay watcher from the future somewhere, thank you so much for watching as well. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.